So good afternoon to everyone, and greetings from beautiful sunny Vienna, with a lot of technical difficulties for organization of this particular Methane Monday, but somehow I hope we will manage everything. So for the rules, you already know how to mute, how to unmute, and when to raise hand for your questions, either along the presentations, and we will come back afterwards to it, or later after the end of the slides. My name is Karolina Čegir, and I work in Energy Community Secretariat, but we are doing this Methane Mondays together with Gas Infrastructure Europe and Naftogaz, and not so many words needed for both of the organizations. You are all familiar with it, and they are well known. So Gas Infrastructure Europe as association of LNG and storage and transmission system operators, and entire gas infrastructure in Europe, and then Naftogaz with really long history as a technical association of European gas industry. Next one. And just to show and to remind those who are familiar with the energy community, it is based on the treaty signed between European Union and 9 contracting parties at that time. Some of contracting parties switch to European Union, so they are not under the Secretariat anymore, and then some new came. More or less, you can see those yellow marked on the map are contracting parties, and Ukraine is one of them, and we are continuously in our thoughts with our colleagues in Ukraine and trying to help as much as we can. We are lucky that today we will have Ukrainian representatives as well after some time as participants, but also as presenters. This is just overview what we did it actually this year. It was already 3 Methane Mondays. We passed through different aspects like focus on the upcoming regulation in European Union. So industry presented their views in front of European Commission, and this process is going on anyhow in European Union. We had also global overview what the different organizations are doing related to recording and monitoring methane emissions, as well as certification of emissions. Very interesting thing which might come more and more important. Then in June we will have again kind of overview, but satellite overview. So what satellites are recording from methane emissions. And then for today we have actually OGMP framework, so not what is actually all the time measured, but also what is reported and assessed by the companies. So today, first slot is actually shared between OGMP team in UN. So we will have Adolfo Contreras Ruiz Esparza and Erin Tolos to explain what OGMP in the meantime did it related to guidelines, how to actually better monitor and how to move from tier 1 to tier 5. We will have presentation on technologies, how to improve actually this monitoring and reporting issues. So what technologies are present at the market. And we will have Cindy Verhoeven from Sniffers talking about that. And then we prepared the slot when actually companies, few companies agreed to present their experience, how it was for them in those 2 years with obligation to, or commitment, better to say, to report it. So we will have Storengy and Italgas, two ladies, Sandra Capella and Angelica Ricetti. And then we will have also two companies from energy community, contracting parties, also those of you who actually committed themselves to report in OGMP. So Maja Celeska from Gamma, from Macedonian transmission system operator, and Mr. Oleksiy Rybchkin from Naftogaz. So with that, I would say Adolfo, I believe, will start first with OGMP framework.
Okay.
So Adolfo, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to each one, or good morning if is the case. Just please let me share my screen. So let me check. Now you can see my screen.
Yeah.
Okay, just hold on. Let me change. Because you are looking my presentation screen or the other one? Just because
Neither.
neither. Oh, let me come back. Just hold on. Now you can see my screen.
No.
Okay, just hold on. So maybe, do you have the last version? Because I sent it on Sunday. So I don't know why. So maybe if you can.
Sure, I'll try.
Share, yeah, please. The same presentation, don't worry. I sent it on slide.
That you sent to Carolina?
Yep.
I don't see an attachment on it.
You don't have the attachment? No.
But maybe you sent the one you, okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
now you have it.
That you sent it to me. Okay.
Yeah. I hope that everything is seen now because we open it in the meantime.
Great, thank you.
Then just set when to switch the slide and it will be fine.
Okay, so good afternoon to everyone. Sorry for the delay. I will present the OGMP implementation plan, how to use the TGDs. Finally, my colleague Erin Toulos will explain how to achieve the uncertainty and reconciliation process. Please, the next one. Okay, you can change to the next slide. So, well, the OGMP has some requirements and some data disclosure. The OGMP requirements is we request to all the companies to define and disclose 2025 methane reduction targets, submit an implementation plan on the pathway to the gold standard, report annually the methane emissions from both operated and unoperated assets. As you see, it's not that difficult. And from that information will be publicly reported. We will publicly report the declared methane reduction targets of companies, the total emission from the companies aggregated by core source and by level, and with a distinction between operated and unoperated assets, as well as the progress towards the target. Member companies are responsible who will have the opportunity to review the company fact sheets before publication. And one very important issue is all the confidential information at asset level, and actually also in country level, will be not be publicly disclosed. So please, the next one. Okay, so what is the company target? Well, the company should provide the unit with a target where the company propose how to achieve a decrease of emissions through the assets and the operated and unoperated assets. And the companies can adopt different targets, either absolute or intensity. In case of variable gas production or conveyed gas volume, intensity is an option, and the denominator is value is crucial for us. In case of absolute target, the base year is important. What UNEP recommends is the adoption of an ambitious target that matches the companies is already doing, and is aligned with the publicly communicated targets. So next one, please. So the first step that we request for all the companies, once they already provide the target, is start with a materiality analysis. And what we recommend is develop an L3 inventory from all the possible, considering all the possible sources among the assets. And from that point, the companies can use the TGDs provided by OGMP. And one estimated emissions starting from the bigger emitter sources is possible to rank them to obtain the 90% of the total emission of the company. Using that 90% selected, the sources could be added by asset, and then the material analysis of the company will be achieved. So basically, in this example, for example, this is the case of a midstream company, and we can see that in the LNG terminals, the 3 LNG terminals that the company owns, there are the 39.4% of the total emission of the company, and the transmission networks is one added 25.5%. And underground storage, for example, is almost 10%, and compressor is just 15.2%. This is an example. Please, the next one. So once that the company has a materiality analysis, another important issue is the commitment to reach L4/L5 reporting in 5 years for operated assets. So in this case, for example, the table shows that the company plans to achieve the gold standard, aiming to report all material emissions at level L4/L5 in year 3. Well, the staged approach is having the assets reported in L4/5 prior to the deadline, and there are also an explanation of the staged approach. The company may add notes about the methodology used for the staged approach. For example, how the company is clustering similar assets, or the staged approach starting with assets with bigger complexity. This could be an example. Please, the next one. So other important part is the credible and explicit path for operated assets. In this part of the implementation plan, the company can explain and elaborate a little bit more how they are approaching, or how they plan to achieve the gold standard in the next 3 years. And for example, in this case, as you remember, this is based on an example. The LNG terminals were the most material sources. So the company, for example, developed an specific annex to explain all the possible, how the company is trying to take measurements in all the possible sources among the LNG terminals, because the materiality, as you saw it, is almost 40%. So please, the next one. In the next one, I will show you an example. Well, there are also another requirement is the L4/L5 reconciliation considerations. This is something that we also request to the companies. So the companies are encouraged to share high-level considerations on how they plan to tackle reconciliation. The thinking process regarding their sampling plan, justification for choosing a certain mix of method, technologies, etc., and the detailed approach will be included in the annual report. This is an important issue. Next one, please. There are another part of the implementation plan that is based on the non-operated assets or joint ventures, where we request to the companies to explain how they are planning to engage the partners, the company partners, to report emissions from their non-operated assets. So basically, we start with the name of the asset, location, country, the name of the operator, and also the plan. We know that this is a difficult, actually, it's a challenge in the most of the times, but sometimes it's possible to convince the partners to collaborate in the OGMP initiative. So basically, we request to the company regarding how they are planning to engage the partners into the reporting. And for example, we have seen some examples in how the companies are sharing knowledge with the partners to how to take measurements, how to report. They are doing workshops to explain the convenience of joining the initiative and so on. So please, the next one. This is regarding the implementation plan. There are another very important part of the OGMP, that is the technical guidance documents, known as TGDs. The technical guidance documents provide guidance on how to meet OGMP 2.0 reporting requirements for most common material sources. The TGDs were developed by task forces, where several companies were part of these task forces, but we have also the inputs from all the companies to the mirror groups. This it was a challenging task, but finally we already have 16 TGDs, considering the most common methane sources among the whole value chain of hydrocarbons, from oil and well casing head, venting and flaring, incomplete combustion, permeation, general, well, we have incidents, emergency, fugitives in different parts, centrifugal compressors, and so on. So basically, you can find in the web page from OGMP, you can find the TGDs. And I will give you an example in the next slides. I will present an example of how to use the TGDs. Please, you can go to the next one. Thank you. So as example, I took the flare efficiency. We have a TGD on that. It was approved by the steering group in June of 2021. And the structure is basically the same for all the TGDs. It's a brief description of the source. In this case, for example, the types of flares, elevated or ground flares, what typical flare system consists and on its role, types of flaring, continuous, intermittent, batch flares released in a discrete batch, scope boundaries, all sources of emission related to complete combustion of waste gas and is combusted, and either flare, inclusive flare, or combusted should be reported on the flaring. And then we explain in a very accurate way how to report in level 3 or level 4, explaining and giving examples for quantification methodologies and some example models. So please go to the next one. For example, following the example, in the case of flare efficiency, we have, for example, in this case, the level 3 quantifications methodologies. The companies should consider, for example, in this case, 3 main source data. That is the gas flow, directly measured with the mass balance, the gas composition, either direct measured through mass balance, process simulation, regulated specifications. But in this case, because it's a level 3, we can consider that the structure and efficiency of the flare, we can assume that is 98%. That we know that is not, in most of the cases, is not a real value, but in this case, because it's level 3, we can accept that. Or the country, or the company can use also the specifications in country level. So please, the next one. In the case of level 4, we are a little bit more detailed. So we consider basically the same three source data: the gas flow, the gas composition, and the destruction efficiency. But in this case, we request continuous direct measurements or mass balance or process simulation. For the gas composition, we also request continuous direct measurements or sample measurements. And to calculate the destruction efficiency, we request measurement-based or determine via representative sampling. Or there are the other case of engineering calculation, considering the wind speed, wind direction, humidity in the atmosphere, and other possible variables. The uncertainty guidance provides guidance on how to develop statistic representative samples in the case, for example, that the company owns several similar flares. Yep. Importance for the operator's judgment for both L3/L4. Practitioners should use methodologies that best represent the conditions and practices on their own facilities. Okay, so basically, in level 4, we request more information in order that we have the confidentiality on the final value is high. So the next one, please. So now I give you the floor to Erin, my colleague. Erin.
Adolfo. So the main question that we encounter is how to get to that level 4, level 5, sometimes written level 4/level 5 within the 3 years. And so we've also developed a guidance document describing the uncertainty and reconciliation that leads to level 5 reporting. So I have just a few schematics to describe what that means, since there is often a lot of confusion or uncertainty among members about what that means. And so level 3 is fairly familiar, and Adolfo's just been speaking about that. It's all of the sources from a member company using generic emission factors. Level 4 is the next step. So that's tailoring the methodologies and using measurements and engineering calculations to come up with emissions estimates that are specific to a company's assets rather than generic or national averages. And so, as Adolfo has just explained, it's guided by the materiality assessment at level 3, looking at the majority of sources across all the assets and coming up with these specific methodologies, which can be source level direct measurements, companies' specific emission factors, engineering calculations, or any combination thereof. And finally, to achieve level 5 is not simply a site level measurement. Rather, level 5 starts with a source-based inventory as prepared in level 4, adds a site level measurement with estimated uncertainty, and then compares that source level inventory with the site level measurements to understand any discrepancies and make appropriate adjustments. But the base of your level 5 inventory is still a level 4 inventory. It's simply taking the next step to perform site level measurements as a quality assurance check to make sure that the level 4 is thorough, complete, and reasonably accurate. If you go to the next slide. Thank you. And so reconciliation in this reporting process is an iterative process of investigation. And so it's not some sort of bottom-up or inventory-based measurement compared to a single number, trying to make those numbers match. Rather, each year it's about developing your best estimate at a source level inventory, defining an independent sampling strategy for site level measurements that considers the population of assets, the largest sources, the largest uncertainty, performing measurements for this sampling strategy, which is not everything. It's simply a representative sampling, comparing the sum of your inventory with those site level or population of site level measurements, and making adjustments to your source level to reflect the learnings at those site level measurements. We know that seldom, if ever, will those numbers match exactly, but they should inform a best emissions estimate. Next slide, please. And so in another diagram of this, level 4 inventory would be produced. You'd have a sum of your sources to get some sort of total. Then a company would go perform site level measurements at an asset and come up with some other number with some uncertainty. They'd compare these. What are we learning? So for example, a lot of the academic literature has focused on US sources, where there's a source-based inventory from the United States EPA. Site level measurements have often been performed with airplanes, drones, trucks, etc. And they've identified specific sources that are overestimated and specific sources that are underestimated. An example of an often underestimated source tends to be flares, where there are instances that flares aren't lit. And so if they're not lit, they're clearly not performing at a 98% combustion efficiency. And so in the event where an operator performed site level measurements and found a bunch of unlit flares, it would be appropriate to revisit the level 4 estimates of flares and adjust for that finding. Is it possible to put the slides back? Thank you. And so what you see here is an adjustment of some sources up, some sources down to reflect what was learned in the site level measurements. So it's a series of investigations, not trying to make these two numbers match, but letting one inform the other. Next slide, please. The other most common question we receive is, how much sampling is enough? Do I have to measure everything at the site level? And so it depends on the materiality of a particular asset and the details. There is no single sampling strategy that can be defined up front. An operator should use judgment just to make sure the sampling is representative and provide justification for the approach. On the left, you see a starting point table, and I'll describe what the table does, but it's important to note that this is not a required sampling strategy. This is just an aid or a help for companies that have no idea where to start because they've never performed measurements before. This sampling table can be used at a site level measuring, or it can be used for source level measuring when coming up with new company specific emission factors. There are multiple dimensions to this table, and it's meant to describe directional sampling. So on the left set of columns, we've described if you have a simple site or a simple source. So what we mean by this is a collection of meters or a collection of miles of pipeline or really simple upstream facilities or maybe a particular type of pump or a set of controllers. And so less sampling is needed if the source is very simple and doesn't vary as widely. Conversely, on the right, we've defined a separate sampling strategy for complex facilities. So an offshore production facility or a compressor station or something really complicated that can have highly variable emissions should be treated as a complex source. From top to bottom, we acknowledge that although for larger and larger samples, the absolute number of measurements one might take grows, the percentage of the assets that need to be sampled in order to get a representative picture decreases. So for really small populations, for simple sources, a few measurements may suffice, whereas for complex sources, you may need to measure most or all of those very small population of facilities. Conversely, at a mega population, 5-ish% of 1,000 sources is probably more than sufficient. On the other hand, for really complex facilities, maybe 10, 20, 30% makes more sense. And so what we're trying to communicate here is you need more sampling for complex versus simple things, and you're going to have to sample a greater number or a greater percentage of your facilities for smaller and smaller populations in order to ensure a sampling size is representative. The final dimension illustrated in this table is the blue text versus the red, and this simply acknowledges that the more material a source is, or the larger percentage of your total emissions an asset or a source represents, the more effort an operator should put into the sampling. Focus where the largest emissions and the largest uncertainties lie. Next slide, please. And finally, I know this is really wordy, but I'll just pop through in statements the most important facets of an uncertainty and reconciliation process includes ensuring that emissions data are determined on the same basis. In other words, if an operator is going to compare source level estimates with site level estimates, it probably should not be an annual estimate divided equally down to the minutes compared with a quick minutes long snapshot of a facility. Make sure that you're comparing apples to apples. Second, measurement should include an estimate of the uncertainty as well as the source level estimate, because that uncertainty is important context to understand how similar those two values are. There should be reasonable agreement between the uncertainties, but we expect that, again, it's an iterative process and it'll improve year over year. And finally, operators should apply judgment and focus on reducing uncertainty where it matters most. Again, if there's a source that only represents 0.5% of your total emissions, being 100% wrong doesn't really change your total answer very much. If there's a source that represents 40% of the emissions, being 100% wrong matters a lot. And so focus where the answer matters. And that's it for us. Glad to take questions. I'm sure Adolfo is as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Erin and Adolfo, and the entire OEN actually team together with Julia Ferrin. So please put your questions in chat box, so we will come back to it. And now I would like to invite Cindy Verhoeven from Sniffers to take the floor.
Yes, hello, thank you.
Hello.
Introduction. I'm going to share my screen. And let's see. Here we are. You see the slideshow or the separate slides right now?
We see slides perfectly in the presentation show, so everything fine.
Okay. Yeah, so my name is Cindy Verhoeven. I work for company The Sniffers, Belgian company. We have about 30 years of experience in emission monitoring and also pipeline integrity. We work globally and have realized roughly 9,000 emission reduction projects, LDAR programs, and are also certified and accredited to perform these measurements. And I would like, today to give you kind of a perspective from a technology provider, a service provider, on how you can implement and also improve measurements to gradually move from an OGMP level 1 towards your level 5 compliance. So the Sniffers has been performing LDAR projects for many, many years. We have a wide range of services in that perspective, mainly focusing on typical LDAR programs where we use FID, handheld devices to detect small leaks and bigger leaks. We also use optical gas imaging cameras to detect the more bigger leaks in facilities. Since about 5 years ago, we developed a dedicated program for methane emissions upstream. And we also have some specialized programs, particularly for storage tanks, LNG terminals, etc. We have also developed our own emission management software program. We have done that basically already since the 90s to manage our own data, and year by year it has more evolved towards a customer reporting tool. So yeah, we've already heard some presentations regarding what the OGMP 2.0 framework and what the different levels mean. What we see is that as of level 3, a source-based inventory is needed, and basically that is also the backbone of any high quality and successful LDAR program. So what I would like to focus on today is an LDAR program is basically measuring fugitive emissions. We see that this is a very good place to start because these type of measurements are very easy to implement, lower cost, low effort basically. And we see that other emission types, more or less the incomplete combustion, flare efficiency, are often more difficult measurements to implement. So that's why starting with LDAR, starting with a detailed inventory of sources, that is a very good place to start for any emission reduction program. So when we start, we typically see this kind of situation. Our companies would like to, they have targets and they would like to understand, okay, where are we now with our complete emission picture and how do we want to move towards our targets? And often companies are already performing measurements or they have estimates and models in place. But we see if you want to move towards a level 3, level 4, and level 5, especially if you are going to compare a top-down and bottom-up approach, yeah, you need to increase the reliability, the completeness, and also the accuracy in your program. And that is basically what we help companies to achieve. So as I mentioned, when we start by building the backbone of a program, which is the source inventory. So having a good understanding of your assets and how many sources there are, and having that overview, that allows you to shape a program, to make a multi-year planning, and to define a measurement scope. And that is basically the first step to do. Even though, for example, if in the beginning it is not yet clear which measurement technologies should we implement, what is the actual leak and repair threshold that we should consider, especially with also when European regulation is coming up and is still not finalized. So there are a lot of question marks. But starting out with an inventory, that is something that you don't have to wait with. You can immediately take that first step because it will help you further down the line as well. So when we have that inventory in place, we are going to build a baseline of emissions. We are going to start measuring. That doesn't mean that you have to measure everything with the biggest level of detail from the beginning. No, we are more a fan of starting gradually, again, depending on the type of asset, depending on where companies are at this moment. If you don't have any LDAR program installed whatsoever, yeah, if you start with the highest level of detail from the beginning, it can be very overwhelming. You will have a lot of leaks and unexpected situations, and yeah, you won't have time to repair, for example, all the leaks that you find in the beginning. So yeah, that's something that we always discuss with the customer. And that's also where we choose the technologies that we are going to use for the measurements. And then gradually we will introduce potential improvements for the program. That can be improvements of additional measurement technologies, but it can also be improvements in a maintenance regime or in a measurement scope, for example. And then the final step, what we see is really works and helps to drive those results even after years. That is if we start to benchmark. So it can be internal comparison. If a company has assets spread all over the world, what can we learn from other assets? What are they doing differently? And it can also be external benchmarking against anonymized emission data. So here you see an overview of the most important steps. There are basically only 3 steps in an LDAR program, which is first identify the sources, building that inventory. Secondly, quantify, which is the measurements out there in the field, and then calculating emissions. And then there is the reporting and a follow-up. There should always be that third step, closing the leaks, mitigating emissions, and improving the situation, and use that as input for the next LDAR cycle. So we realized that by following protocols that are already there and defining a very clear scope cycle. And then, of course, building that inventory. And based on those 3, we carefully choose measurement techniques. Sometimes a regulatory framework in a certain country is already in place, and you have to use a certain measurement technology to be compliant. We also have, of course, highly trained people. I'm not sure if I click on this. Can you see the screen now? So we keep track of knowledge database, a matrix where we train people to work with those different measurement technologies. So that is very important. Too often we see, for example, maintenance people that already have a very full day-to-day job, and they also additionally have to perform measurements. We train our people to perform 1,000 reliable measurements per day. That's quite a task. The 6th point is software. So again, yeah, we have developed our own dedicated software, but it's really an advice to choose a reliable software program to manage all that emission data that is coming in. So it's not only the inventory that you need to manage, and some companies have equipment inventories in maintenance programs, for example, in SAP, but those softwares are often not detailed enough with a drill down capability to source level, but also they are not designed to calculate and report emissions. So that's a software for a different purpose. So you have to choose something that is fit for the purpose of emission reporting. Then keep optimizing. So it's important to start out somewhere at some level, and every time ask yourself, what can I improve next? Can I follow up on leaks more tightly? Can I use a different measurement technology that allows me to find a different type of leak? Can I add other emission types? I've now implemented an LDAR program. I have an understanding of where my vent stacks or flares are and what about starting measurements there instead of modeling? So every time, what about floating roof tanks? Every time ask yourself the question, where can I improve? Yeah, and the final point is discipline. So every time stick with the program cycle and try to follow up. Those are basically the most important steps. And here you see an overview of well, the identification, quantification, and reporting. So we, as a measurement company, most of the time, the companies, our clients, they see the middle part. They see the technicians in the field and they think, okay, an LDAR program is performing measurements, but it's actually much more than that. So we do pay a lot of attention in the preparation phase, but that has a very high payback later on in the reporting phase, because basically your report, your emission data is as intelligent as your inventory, as the level of detail and everything that you put into the source-based inventory. Is a source accessible? Is it in isolation? What is the composition? We also take that into account. When I have a leak, we know the composition exactly. It's not always gas. Of course, in the gas industry, it's mainly methane that you're measuring, but it can also be condensate or any other substance. We also measure, for example, in downstream facilities such as refineries, where you have all sorts of hazardous substances and volatile organic compounds. So we take all that into consideration, and that gives a higher accuracy in your methane emission calculation in the end. When we report, we make sure that we have some interesting information to report on all the stakeholders. We will see that later on also. We provide emission reports for environmental management, for facility management and corporate management, but we also provide very hands-on information for maintenance, for local maintenance personnel, so they know how to prioritize leak repair and how to follow up. Here you see a very practical overview of the devices that are most commonly used for fugitive emissions for LDAR programs in the field. Portable devices, very easy to implement, handheld, fast. Of course, we do see some differences. The EPA ranks bagging or high flow sample as the highest accuracy. It's EPA rank 1. That means that you actually bag a leak and you measure the flow and you measure the concentration, you know the molecular mass. So it's a direct measurement, a direct loss measurement in grams per hour or kilograms per year. If you actually want to know what is coming from a single source, this is the best field measurement you can do. The second is the sniffing device, which you see in the middle. You see a blue device, which is basically the most modern version. Also it's for example connected with our software for automatic data management and processing. Methane can be measured quite well with handheld laser devices. All these devices, they generate a concentration in ppms, and you use factors to convert those concentrations into a loss in kilograms per year. So it's not a direct measurement, and that immediately means a lower accuracy. We have optical gas imaging cameras. It's a very nice tool. It's globally, I think the most commonly used by companies, also by themselves. It's of course a very handy tool. It allows for a very fast screening of a facility, but it does also have its limitations. So you will not find the smaller leaks, especially methane, the smallest molecule. Is quite difficult to visualize with the camera. Roughly, in practical circumstances, we measure leaks above 10,000 ppm in ideal circumstances and upwards. The combination of screening with a camera and then quantifying leaks with either a high flow sampler or a special piece of software that we will see later on also that interprets the camera image, that is a potential combination. But then again, you are also missing a large spectrum of leaks, leaks that you will find with the sniffing tool, but that you will not see with the camera simply because they are too small. Typically, we see in the gas industry that there are lots of these smaller leaks. And if you have thousands and thousands of sources, yeah, it can definitely add up. Here you see the correlation factors that we use. So if you have that inventory in place, and this is why it is really the backbone, it is needed for level 3 and upwards, because if you are using a sniffing device or an optical gas imaging camera to detect leaks, you are using these conversion factors to convert the ppm values into a loss in kilogram per year. But what you also need to do is add a certain non-leak or default 0 value for all the sources that are not leaking. And that is why you need the most detailed inventory of your sources. So you need to also account for the non-leakers, both with the FID and also with the camera. I wrote down here a reminder. What we believe as a service provider is absolutely needed is the development of specific factors, emission factors. It can be specific factors for a certain emission type or facility, but it can also be correlation factors as an alternative to these ones, because these ones are the only ones available. They have been developed many, many years ago under EPA Method 21, and later on also the optical gas imaging factors, but they were not designed for methane, which is a big drawback. So we see when we start to high flow sample, so actually bag the leaks, yeah, that's when we see big deviations. Here we see example of high flow sampling. So you actually put a bag over a piece of equipment and measure what's coming out of it. Well, that immediately brings me to this slide. The original high flow sampler, it was used in the 90s to develop those factors, but it was discontinued from production. So the original high flow samplers are very hard to maintain. It's old technology. And at some point we decided to develop our own high flow sampler. Modern device, lightweight. We are actually using these devices. We've built a couple of them. And we believe that with such a modern device that also has connectivity to software, etc., higher accuracy, automatic data processing, so a high traceability, that this is absolutely needed to develop those new methane-specific emission factors or correlation factors. Here you see the example why. In this table, you see data points that we have gathered. I'm not sure if you can see my mouse. You see a ppm value, an LDAR value, which is the actual rounded value that we measured with the sniffing device. And in the columns to the right, you will see different values calculated with either correlation factors or with optical gas imaging factors. And then on the absolute right, you see the actual value coming out of the leak measured with a high flow sampler. And here you see big deviations, and especially in the larger leaks, so the leaks that contribute the most in your emission number, that's where we see that the factors tend to give a very high overestimation. 15 can be even a factor 15 to 20 on average over a total LDAR program. So that's not something to be neglected, especially if you're looking for accuracy in your program. So here the highest number in this example was 559 kilograms per year versus the actual value 2.37 kilograms per year on a single source. Leak quantification using the camera in combination with the Providence photonics tablet. That is also an option. The advantage is that you can apply this on sources that are not baggable, that are, for example, too large, or the flow doesn't match the high flow sampler, or it's simply not accessible. Then this would be a nice alternative. Again, it's not that easy. It's not always a solution. There are some drawbacks. Everything is an issue with the camera, distance, delta temperature between the gas and the atmosphere. For example, moving leaves on the background, water puddles can be interpreted as emissions. So that is really something, very practical things that we as a technology provider know, and that you have to really take into consideration in your program, that these inaccuracies can lead to very large deviations from reality. Something we also advise and is often overlooked is internal passing valves. So when we measure, for example, combustion efficiency or venting emissions, but the actual root cause, which is a valve leaking on the inside, yeah, that is also something that you can detect, quantify at that point. So sometimes the exhaust is the flare or vent tip is very difficult to measure. It's high up, high altitude. You do see an emission there, for example, with a camera, and you can use another technology to find the cause of that emission. Here you see the device looking for internally passing valves.
I apologize, Cindy, but can you somehow conclude, because I mean, everything is very interesting and it's very detailed. This is true, and we will really publish slides afterwards. But still, maybe better to leave some space for questions, and then also to have our companies to present experience.
Yes, then I will conclude with two slides. So basically what we would advise is to build a program, a multi-year program, mixing up those technologies, but starting out always with that inventory and baseline emissions. And then the final quick slide I would like to use, this one, yeah, is bring all that emission data together in a suitable and dedicated software program. So in this example, you see what we call hybrid emission calculation coming from different sources using different types of technologies, but you can register them all and add them all up, chase repairs, and build your program in a software such as this one. And with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. I'm sure if there is time for questions, otherwise I will be gladly answering them afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy, and apologies for cutting cutting this a bit, but
no problem.
Who knows? Maybe we will have dedicated webinars in autumn as well, maybe for a specific issue. With that, I would like to invite again all to put questions or to keep them in mind, and to invite actually first of our company speakers, because I would like to ask Sandra Capella to take a floor and to tell us how storage operator actually had experience in reporting. And then we will, after that, we will have Italgas as a big distribution system operator, and then TSO, and also then Naftogaz at the end together. I mean, having storages and having production sites as well. So Sandra, please take a floor, and we will share the slides.
Thank you very much. So these are the slides indeed. So thank you. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody. So today I'm I'm Sandra Capella from the strategic division of Storengy France, and today I'm here with my colleague Olivier Bor, that is our technical expert, to talk to you about, if you can change the slide, to talk about our experience on OGMP 2.0 more exactly on the documents like reporting and implementation plan. So it be a very short intervention, so not everything will be said, but no matter what, I try to explain you the big lines on what we are doing to improve our reporting, and especially how to get level 4 and maybe level 5 in the next years. So if we can change the slide, just a few words before starting about Storengy France. So we are a subsidiary of ENGIE Group, and we are the underground gas storage operator of ENGIE Group, that is named Storengy France, and we are operating 14 underground storage sites in France, 9 of them in aquifer storage reservoir, 4 of them in salt caverns and 1 in a depleted reservoir. So we have a gas storage capacity of about 10 gigacubic meters of natural gas, which corresponds to roughly 25% of the French consumption. So in terms of environmental ambition, so we have been working in reducing our impact for a few years, since at least 2015. We are quite aware that we are not the main contributors to methane emissions in national emissions reporting with 0.1%, but no matter what, we still remain engaged on reducing our industrial footprint of our activity. That's the reason why, and especially for methane emissions, that's the reason why we joined OGMP 2.0 in September 2020 with a double objective. The first one, to improve our reporting in order to reach level 4 on material sources by 2025, if I'm not wrong, so which means reporting the year 2023, and by reducing at least 25% of our methane emissions by 2025. So if you can change the slide. So just before we enter in the reporting and implementation plan, here we can see an image and a schematic representation of a OGS site, which means that with all the equipments and units that are present, which can be a matter of methane emissions. We can have compressor stations. We have gas treatment units that can be responsible for methane emissions, as well the laboratories, as you know. Yeah, vents due to maintenance actions, works, incidents. Incomplete combustion as well. When we're talking about compressors, we have turbines, we have engines that are burning gas. So we have exhaust gases with methane, if the combustion is not complete, as well for the water removal units, especially for the regeneration part, that is also that have also in their constitution some flarings. So some flares. So all this can lead to some incompleted combustions, and no matter what, we can have leaks, as explained by our last contribution. So if we change the slide, here we presented the framework of OGS reporting proposed by OGMP. So we have 2 main sections in this reporting. The first one is the compressor stations with all the different kind of emissions that can be related to this activity of compressor, and then all that concerns treatment and wells. So, for instance, Storengy France is now reporting each source, its emission source, so at level 3. With the efforts that are going to reach level 4 and integrity of all of our emissions at level 4 by 2024. So now what we are doing is that with the arrival of the technical guidelines, we were able to confrontate our methodology, our internal methodology, with what is proposed by the OGMP in these technical guidelines. We can compare them, you can validate it. First of all, our methodology, and also for those sources that were not compatibilized, we were able to integrate the formulas that are proposed in these technical guidelines to get at least level 3, and we know what to do to get level 4 for each sources. So it's a very useful documents that have been supplied by OGMP. They can orientate all the actors in order to improve their reporting. So now, source per source, what we are doing to reach level 4, so it's like a mixture of explanation about reporting and implementation plan. So about the compressor, so the compression units, we are considering this as a material source. It's about 30% of our overall methane emissions. So we have 3 different sources of methane: the compressor seals, the startup, and the shutdown phases. For the compressor seals, so for instance, a major part of our compressor activity, in particular emissions coming from compressor seals, are reported at level 3, which means that we are using generic emission factors coming from literature, but mainly from technology suppliers, except for 2 sites where we are already performing measurements, continuous measurements. We are reporting these 2 sites at level 4. So to reach level 4 for all the compressor stations that we are operating in our sites, we are replicating what we are doing for these 2 last sites to all the other sites. And the idea is to be capable to have monitoring of our emissions in terms of seals next year. For startup and shutdown phases, the idea here is to quantify the methane emission through some engineer calculations based on the volumes of the loops, taking in consideration the inlet pressure levels. So we are quite confident with the level 4, as explained in the technical guidelines, as well for the shutdowns. No matter what, for the startup phase, we are actually proceeding some measurements this year in order to validate the engineer calculation. So this year we will proceed to level 3. Next year will be level 4 for the startup phase. No matter what, for the shutdown, we are already at level 4. For purging vents and incidents that can occur from all the equipment that we have on site, so compressors, wells, and gas treatment units. So here, once again, we are applying engineer calculations. We are using the volume section of the pipe, the equipment, and the pressure conditions, as well as the temperature of the gas and so on, to calculate the volume that is purging into the atmosphere. So we are considering here level 4 as well. So if you change the slide. So what about fugitive emissions? Just to complete what just said before our colleague, we are doing LDAR campaigns for a few years now. So this LDAR campaigns is not only detection, but also is coupled with the quantification part. So we are doing this for all the components of each UGS sites of us. How are we doing this? So we are taking a subcontractor that is certified, and he is using infrared cameras for detection, and then FID analyzers for the quantification. So the quantification here is a methodology that is recognized by international standards, as mentioned before, and the subcontractor is certified. So we consider here that we are estimating our emission at level 4. No matter what, some news coming from this regulation project, European regulation project on methane emissions, that is asking to increase the detection level of our LDAR campaigns to 500 ppm. So we start readapting our LDAR campaigns to this, which means that significant changements are going to be done in this kind of campaigns. We have a first result, a first experience to a first site that we have done this year by increasing the detection level at 500 ppm. We are quite conscious that this modification will increase our campaign duration by 3, because we are no more using infrared cameras, but instead or FID analyzers. So we take much more time to pass through all our components in our sites. And this only to have a supplementary emissions that concerning 1%, increasing by 1% of our total leaks. So we will keep proceeding. We are still waiting for the conclusions of the Commission, the European Commission, and we are readapting our campaigns in that sense. For the laboratory emissions, we also consider this as a material source. So this is basically the quantification of these emissions are basically done via flow meter and completed with some engineer calculations. So we are considering this level 4 as well. For the incomplete combustion, so this is at the site level. This is the only sources that we are not considering material, because they are actually doing less than 5% of our overall site emissions. No matter, that's the reason that the major part of these sources are going to be contabilized as level 3 through generic emission factors. No matter what, some of these emissions are already measured by specific campaigns, which means that some of them will be already level 4. So if you change the slide, just to finish about level 5 and our understanding, well, we are very committed to level 5 as well in order to reach the ambition of OGMP. We have done some studies internally, like benchmark, in order to identify the best technology adapted to the configuration of our OGS sites. We are very implicated on the GERG project on site level technologies experimentations since the beginning with a lot of other partners that are also operators of the gas infrastructures. And this year, recently, we also proceeded to a site level experimentation in one of our sites that has been done in the parallel of our LDAR campaign. That where we have a detection through camera and a FID analyzer that has been completed with a bagging campaign as well, in order to be sure that in terms of source level we have the best quantification, the most accurate quantification as possible. And then we are comparing these results with the drone campaign, with the results that is coming from a drone campaign or a site level measurement. So I'm not going to share with you today the results, but we are quite more confident about the accuracy of our source level technologies than these first results of this first campaign in terms of top-down technology. So to conclude today, just the next slide. Storengy France is now capable to report 80% of material sources in terms of methane emissions as level 4. According to these TGD's specifications. Storengy France is also installing the best solution to ensure a monitoring of our compressor seals in order to reach level 4 to this kind of emissions. That's the reason why we'll be able, since these emissions will reach level 4, we'll be able to place all our sites almost at level 4 as well. Then complete combustion is not material as far we could check according to our first estimations. That's the reason why we still remain at level 3, except for some sources where we are doing experiments and measurements. And finally, Storengy France will proceed the efforts on site level technologies and reconciliation resource level measurements in the next year with the collaborations in progress with GERG and also in internal activities that we are dealing in Storengy. I don't know if there is any question, but I can finish here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sandra, for slides and for sharing the experience. It looks really impressive what companies can do in the meantime. And then now I would actually like to ask Mr. Rybiakin from Naftogaz to take a floor, and then in the meantime we will prepare Italgas presentation. So Lexi, please, floor is yours.
Hello. Let me share my slide, please. Can you see it? Can you see my slide? Yes, thank you. Yeah, first of all, thank you for the invitation during those very difficult times for us. But although we have a war, although we have numerous problem in Ukraine, methane emission for us, I would say tactically and strategically still remains very important. I will like Naftogaz, for those who doesn't know, is the biggest oil and gas company in Ukraine. We are responsible for more than 80% of the extractives, and we have a storage system operator in our portfolio, and huge amount of revenues, and more than 50,000 employees works for us. Prior to the war, we have methane reduction emission strategy in our green portfolio. So we plan to, for 10 years to secure energy independence and diversify demand for gas, and to be a sustainable company till 2050. And in our pathway to climate neutrality, methane emission bores, among other very important steps that we cover and plan to actively involved in this activity. So we were supporting Global Methane Pledge, and we like fully were committed to different like methane reduction strategy in like worldwide. So we were like in global context. As for like our timeline for like methane emission reduction before the war, so basically we had a memorandum with the BRD and with our ministry, and we did the first measurement campaign in 2019. We have a second stage of our measurement campaign in 2020. We like last year submitted the level 1 report on the OGMP 2.0, and like pre-war plans, we had like compliance with level 3 of OGMP requirements and implementation of some measures from the investment program, but because some objects got damaged and they are located on the occupied territories, like data on them are limited, so Naftogaz will submit, unfortunately, level 1 report in 2022 and continue to gather data to upgrade to the next level. Also, we did like numerous activity to do the methane emission reduction at our UGV, so the extraction unit. Like mostly we have problem with the liquids in our wells, and like we implemented several technologies. We invested, you can see the figures, I won't repeat them. We invested several $1 million to test the technology and to decrease the amount of the methane, and we were having plans to invest more and more into this, but like unfortunately currently we're like more shifted to another activity, but like as you see, we were like really involved into methane emission reduction. But unfortunately, war changed the priorities from the development to more security. We have problem with the mass migration, decrease the number of subscribers, with destroyed infrastructure, with the problem with the gas sale, with suspended business, with different problems. Unfortunately, our production, which is in like 80% of this in Kharkiv and Poltava Oblast, which are now close to the combat area. And like really, it's hard to gather data from this territory, like not telling about the employees who, with their families, sometimes fled to the neighboring country or to more safe location. So it's obviously really hard to demand from the management to its employees to also be involved into normal routine life activity, which is the methane and in other environmental conditions. This is briefly the damaged infrastructure, and we have several of our locations being captured, several of our CHP and heat station damaged. But to return to the OGMP, so like previously we checked the emission categories and methodologies with the OGMP existing and with the one that was adopted by our different branches of our company. We identified the gaps. We identified something that needs to be clarified in order to do our internal bureaucracy. But often it's really hard because you need to adopt some methodology. You need to deal with the scientific institution who will help to do. You need to verify them. So it's a very hard and intensive work. Currently, on a low level, but like we will continue definitely to be in line with the OGMP methodology. To conclude on OGMP reporting, worse circumstances, so we have local data. Since some objects got ruined, damaged, or are now on occupied territories, there are some employees responsible for the data gathering, and they either served in the army or left. So basically, it's human capital who are not able to currently engage to the activity. We have discrepancies with practice. Some categories are overestimated, some categories are underestimated, but it's our more or less internal issue. Differences in reporting between legal entities. Sometimes there is no unified database. We have problem with completeness. There are some OGMP categories that are currently not covered, as we showed on a previous slide. There are some of the not estimated categories that are difficult to quantify to a good level of accuracy. And with the materiality, like bringing level 3 reporting to level 3 reporting will to level 4 reporting will require like materiality analysis across emission, which we will definitely do, but a bit later. And as a general summary, unfortunately for Ukraine, the war has changed priority from development to security with high level of uncertainties. And, it was much more easy to sell, and to get more funds for the climate and environmental issues like before the war, but currently methane emissions is not the biggest polluter to tackle. We have new sources like military equipment, ruined infrastructure, such as oil base and gas transmission systems. So a lot of NGOs, a lot of like governmental activities and like municipal and like business activities are targeting like different kind of polluters, not the methane emission, but before the war, environmental and climate push from EU was a motivation to reduce CO2 emission, and now it shifted to more resource efficiency and energy security. So this, like that, you will save methane. Like it's not about only reporting, but like the more you verify, the more you get data, the more you know where to invest the scarce resources that you now have. And the main driver is now resource efficiency and energy security. So the more methane you will not throw to the air, but you will keep it to the economy. Also, we think that European integration will be a focus as well. Ukraine will get this requirement in the new portion of regulation to align with. So, like, although it's war, we do understand that like it's temporarily postponed, but with the currently our like accession aspiration, and we do hope to receive the candidacy status next month, which will definitely boost the development of different environmental and climate regulation, and methane will be on the top of this. So we are still, we are preparing for this, and like it will be more and more important. Also, with some problem that Ukraine will face financial problem to attract investment to increase the production of gas and to reduce CO2 emission due to the emerging green taxonomies of IFIs. We are now facing it, so like I guess we will apply through the Energy Community Secretariat and through our respective EU colleagues some kind of a waivers for the green taxonomy. So reducing methane emissions should be also a green activity, but sometimes often like we have problem with this to the EBRD and other donors. And in case of restriction embargo of Russian fuels, will be investment in new production facility and infrastructure that emit less CO2 than Russian ones, and we do hope that it will be also in the Ukrainian territory, and we will be able to increase our production and probably substitute the Russian producers to help Europe with the energy security. Yes, thank you. I guess my 10 minutes is over, and thank you one more time for supporting my country and supporting this activity and for having us to participate in this discussion. Although my presentation was more higher political level rather than this like very super interesting that was previously. It was very useful for our colleagues who are now also on this call to note and to implement it and to leapfrog in a methane emission reduction campaign further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexei, for taking part and to giving us insights in current situation, and actually underlying that you are already thinking about post-war situation. And what to say, we wish you that this will come very, very soon, and then we can continue with this methane emissions and OGMP issues like it was planned before. So with that, I would like to invite Angelica Rigetti from Italgas to show us their experience. And my apologies for really taking so long by your presentation, but I hope that it was interesting for everyone, and it's always more interesting issue than we think at the beginning when planning the agenda. So please, Angelica, floor is yours, and we will run the slides.
Thank you, Carolina. Hi to everybody, and thank you for the invitation. I will quickly explain. I try to stay in 10 minutes, but I don't guarantee this. We'll quickly explain the agenda. If you go to the next slide. There is a brief introduction about Italgas, then a short description of the adoption of CRDS technology with a focus on the lesson learned, the challenges faced and the result achieved during this year. And finally, the reporting OGMP with our target of methane emission reduction. We can start with the next slide. With some numbers of Italgas. Italgas is the largest natural gas DSO in Italy and the third largest player in Europe. The company has 7.7 million of end customers and 74,000 kilometers of network, and approximately 4,200 employees. Italgas' commitment to address methane emission is twofold. First, the company is strongly committed to reduce its direct emissions and those of its subsidiaries, and this effort is mainly based on the adoption of Piccaro cavity ring down spectroscopy technology. And second, Italgas has taken an important role in gas DSO industry, joined the OGMP 2.0 initiative from the outset, and encouraging proactive methane emission reduction behavior among its peers. Several actions have been taken, including promoting a common approach to methane emission abatement among members of GD4S and among other DSO associations. For example, also Italgas is contributing to the effort to define an Italian methane strategy led by the NGO that is called Friends of the Earth. We can jump to the next slide, where we focused on the CRDS technology adoption. Okay, as you can see in this slide, before the 2018, Italgas used the traditional technology for leak detection with all the limitation that you know. In 2018, Italgas has launched the adoption of the innovative gas leakage detection system based on the laser technology, which was introduced through a first pilot in 2018, which involved the investigation of 15% of the network, followed by the first scale up in 2019 with the survey of 26% of the network. And finally, we have the extension to the 100% of the network in 2020. And with the latest reorganization of our company, Italgas has created a dedicated team that coordinates the LDAR activity, and we have a big fleet that we see after in the next slides. And with this technology, we were able to detect the density of leakage significantly higher than those that we had detected with the traditional technology until 2017. As you can see, in fact, the innovative gas leak detection system allows all DSO to achieve measurable improvements with respect to the traditional technology, and the main advantages are the possibility to find the leaks on the entire network, including main, service line, aerial installation, and so on, to detect a density of leakages significantly higher than I said before, and to be not depending on weather condition. This is for us is very important. We can jump to the other slide where we show the fleet of Picaro's equipment that we have, 24 equipped surveyors and one boat that we use to investigate the pipeline in Venice, for example, under the sea, and 18 for backpacks that we use for the pedestrian investigations, and around 300 people trained and involved into the fight against gas leaks. We could also jump to the next slide that we where we I focused on the consequence on the CRDS technology adoption. As you can imagine, and as I said before, the adoption of this new technology has a great impact, had a great impact on our company, and there have been many challenges to face, such as the new business organization with the establishment of a new dedicated team, which I'm responsible of it, and the spread of the innovation culture on the Italgas territorial units. On the other end, from this experience, we gained some lessons that we make available to our peers or to DSOs that we are approaching new technologies for the first time. For example, an innovative LDA program based on new fleet and a new workforce management, and driven by the prioritization of the investigation based on emissions. And second, the use of all collected data in order to quantify the fugitive emissions and to build a proactive approach to manage pipelines maintenance. And third, to report emission quantification and target reduction in international committees and sustainability index. We can pass to the next slides where we report some KPIs. In fact, in this year, these years we gained a lot of experience on how to manage the fleet. And for this reason, we have put some KPIs that describes our activity. On the left side, there are the KPIs focused on the asset management and the emission management. If you can turn the previous slide, sorry. And Italgas decided that 10% of the capex would be focused on the proactive maintenance in 2021 and the 50% in 2022. And with regard to emission, Italgas has set a law of reduced repair time, and thanks to this, we were able to make a saving of 45% of fugitive emissions. And this percentage of reduction is, in this case, is compared to the scenario in which we had not repaired the leaks, and therefore we would have to count them for 1 year. But we reduce our time of repairing time, and so we have a saving of emission in the year. And in the right side, we have the fleet, the number of the fleet, and also some numbers that characterized our engagement in the training. In fact, we had more than 40 hours for training session, for 40 training section, and more than 1,200 hours for technicians, and 2,000 hours for driving trainers. And so a lot of engagement in the training. We can jump to the next slide where we describe some advantages and some targets that we reach with the CRDS full adoption. For example, the drastic reduction of investigation and repair SLA, the super emitter early detection, and the LISA, that are leak indication search area prioritization. First, the most emissive one, and then the others, and the use of collected data for better asset management choices and the smart maintenance model. In the bottom of the slide, you can see an example of Rome, for example, where the figure shows that the central part of dark color is the most critical one and the most emissive, and so we focused on this part in order to yes, to concentrate and focusing our intervention, and so this is the asset management. We can jump to the other slides where okay, we can open the new topic. As I told before, the core business of Italgas is focused on gas distribution, which it carries out as a part of the wider national system involving the distribution of gas on behalf of sale companies authorized to sell the gas to the end customers. And the operations for the gas distribution business are managed by three main companies in Italgas. That is Italgas Reti, which operates nationwide, the Toscana Energia, that operating in the Tuscany region, and the Medea, operating in Sardinia. We have also the non-operated companies for which we report the emissions in the annual reporting of the OGMP, as for example Metano Sant'Angelo, located near the city of Milan, Umbria Distribuzione, located in the Umbria region, and the Rete Distribuzione, operating in the area of near Turin. Thanks to the use of the CRDS technology on the 100% of the network every year, Italgas positioned itself at level 4 and 5. In fact, the measure of fugitive emission is based on the reconstruction of the flow rate of each LISA. And this process is the result of an in-depth analysis on big data, collected following scheduled leak detection activities. In fact, the emissions from leak detection are calculated as the product between the flow rate of each year LISA detected during the LDAR campaign and the emission time. That is the sum of the period that we fix from the 1st of January to the detection of leaks and the time to repair it. And Italgas strategical plan is going to apply to this, the same procedures already implemented for operated asset, also for the non-operated asset. In fact, as you can see in the table, each DSO will reach L4 and 5 within 3 or 4 years from the first reporting year. So Italgas is very committed to methane fugitive emission reduction. We can jump to the next slides, where I describe the main driver for methane, the main drivers for methane emission reduction that are, as I said before, the prioritization of leaks based on their emission rate, so localization and repair of super emitter first. Try to reduce the time for localization and repair, also in comparison with the standards prescribed by our regulation in Italy, that is called ARERA. Third point is use the asset management and the predictive maintenance algorithm to define the CapEx plan. And in fact, this year, a significant number of investments are expected to be undertaken in these most emissive areas. And thanks to these items, Italgas fixed the target reduction, in a very ambitious target reduction in 2025. And we are in line to reach this target. And in addition, for 2021, with the support by the Politecnico di Torino, Italgas has also estimated the emission not measurable by Picarro technology, such as the permeation, fugitive emissions, vented operational emissions, or maintenance and removal installation of gas meters. And all these quantification will be included into OGMP reporting template for this year. And the last slide, I think. Here we summarize some indication about the next steps for Italgas. First of all, the advisory support. Italgas is now supporting other DSOs across Europe to meet the challenge of reducing methane emission and contributing to achievement of the European environmental target, sharing best practice, giving operative support, and building a smart maintenance model. And second, in terms of leak detection and repair, Italgas is setting up a test field in order to carry out cross-examinations test, for example, with the high flow sampler, in collaboration with the university just mentioned before, the Politecnico di Torino, and is promoting the test phases of new technology such as drones and satellites. I think that is it's the last slide, and so I thank you. And
well, thank you very much, Angelica, and thank you to everyone for being patient and being a bit longer than foreseen, but I think that it's worth. And now I would like to ask Maya Chalaska from Gamma to explain us and to give some insights how it looks like this OGMP framework for very small TSO, but nevertheless taking voluntary part in this reporting. So how was it, this experience in 2 last years for you?
Okay, I will be short because we are on the end of this meeting. I can tell that the small or big house is a lot of work. So we must start from reporting, implementation plan, and so on. We become member of OGMP in 2020, but if then we don't know anything about methodology and plans and so on. So because we are part of this partnership, we are going step by step, leading by team of OGMP. There is a lot of material, meeting and so on, and day by day everything is clearing for us. But I can tell that first. After our implementation plan was adopted last year, we start with plans for this year. We have a budget in our yearly plan, but because of electricity prices and gas, we have some problems with funds, with the financial problems, because a lot of consumers stop taking gas. They switch on another fuel. So these plans about our first action about measuring methane emission is postponed for second half of year. So we will see what will happen and what will be the results, the real results from measuring, and so that the next year I hope that we will have some level. Now we are on level 2, but we are in plan, and the target is for next year to be level 3, and our general target is intensity target is to have 0.25%, but and measuring and achievement of level 4 and 5. But now I can tell that this year is we have excellent result. If last we have 0.26, now we have 0.2%. That is better than the target. So, but they are measured only on inlet and outlet, on total inlet and outlet. So when we measure each assets, we will know where the methane targets are must be pointed. So thank you. I don't want to overtime, because everybody, this is the end of working time. So thank you, and regards from Macedonia.
Thank you very much, Maya. I think that it's important to see that everything, I mean, can be done even with delays, but I would say dedication is the most important.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Anyhow, we will continue, I mean, to work with OGMP for sure and to promote among companies. I hope that it was useful for many participants around the table, our virtual table. So still, if you have some questions, please raise hand. Maybe we still have few minutes, and presenters here with us. I see that in chat some concrete questions were resolved, and it is going to be resolved directly, but that was also purpose of our webinar, to somehow connect different organizations and companies. We are going to publish our all slides at our website, and we are also going to put video, so entire webinar is recorded. So you will have a chance to have a look again, and then maybe to contact presenters directly if needed. So I see the hand from Nikolaus, if I pronounce correctly. So please take the floor.
thank you very much for the very interesting presentation. Nicole Tsokhatsidis from Despa, Greece. I have a question Cindy from the company Snickers about the complete combustion. Presentation says that at the complete combustion, the emission, the methane emissions at level 3, and some of them at level 4. Can you please explain about level 4? How we managed to reach level 4 at the complete combustion?
Yes, thank you for your question. So that means that we will have to measure every single incomplete combustion source. You can do that with various technologies. So we have specialized cameras to look at the combustion efficiency of the flame. We can also do that with drone measurements, where we are looking at specific sources and measuring CO2 to methane ratios. So that's basically how we can determine incomplete combustion from each single individual source. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Just to check if we have more hands. Not really. Not more questions in chat. So I would say thank you very much once again to all presenters, to all participants. I hope that you will find it useful and check it slides at the website, and then see each other in what month time. And they said this is going to be on 20th of June, and we are going to focus on methane emissions data recorded by satellites. So with that, I wish you all very nice afternoon and nice week. Goodbye.